Powered by Riverside FM.
"60 years later, the assassination of President John F. Kennedy still sparks debate and controversy. Was Lee Harvey Oswald the sole perpetrator, or was he part of a larger conspiracy? Join us as we delve into the evidence, examine the key theories, and explore the enduring mystery surrounding one of the most shocking events in American history. Tonight on Newsworthy, 2 words and 2 question marks.
Hi, this is Ed Locke with USA Mortgage. Buying your first home can be overwhelming, but here are 5 tips to make the process go smoother. Number 1, find a lender, me, Ed Locke, that can answer any questions you might have and help you get pre-approved. There are multiple options available based on your situation. Number 2, work with a real estate agent you can trust. Number 3, don't rush the process. Take your time and know that the process could take some time. Number 4, consider all the costs. Number 5, get a home inspection and review it with your realtor. Keep these tips in mind, budget for yourself, and you'll be that much closer to making your dream of homeownership a reality. So reach out to me at 502-680-0953. NMLS ID 448908, DAS Acquisition Company, LLC, doing business as USA Mortgage, NMLS ID 227262. This is not a commitment to lend. Additional terms and conditions apply. USA Mortgage is an equal housing opportunity.
He's alive! Have you checked the children? Get out!
You have scoured the podcast world and finally found us, Newsworthy with Steve and Jerry, where we delve into all things mysterious, macabre, or out of this world, and decide if they are truly newsworthy. 2 words and 2 question marks.
Hello, gentlemen. Welcome in.
Hello,
Well,
hello.
Gentlemen -1. We have Clay with us tonight, though. That's good.
Yes,
I don't-
that's always good.
I don't know if I qualify as a gentleman, but
Oh yeah,
Thanks.
you're a gentleman in our hearts, Clay.
Absolutely.
We're glad you're here, brother.
thanks for
You
having
know-
me back, guys. I'm really glad to be here, especially with such an exciting topic tonight. I think we're going to have a hot show tonight for everybody.
Yeah, I'm excited. Very excited.
Absolutely.
Brett is on vacation. We tried to get him
On a
to take a
beach.
laptop with him and a mic and report from Florida, but he
I
would
think
not
you
do
had
it.
him talked into it, and the wife vetoed the plan.
Speaking of Florida, if you are in Florida or were in Florida, please stop listening to this show and go find cover.
Hunker down. Prayers
Um,
with everybody down there, man.
Yeah,
The people who just survived Helene and the ones that are getting ready to deal with Milton on top of it. It's just a brutal situation.
Yeah, it's really, really bad, and I'm not going to get into it. We could do a whole show on how things have just not gone the way they probably should go, considering the amount of money we spend to do certain things, but we won't cover that. That's a whole different show.
Shout out to my buddy Mike Meharry from the 10th Amendment Center. He is in evacuation zone D. They had A, B, C, and D, and they live in D down there, and they were deciding whether to evacuate or not. And they decided, since they were in D, which is further east and a little bit higher elevation, they decided to hunker down. But they're still pretty close to the Tampa area. They're down there in Tarpon Springs, and keeping he and his wife Cynthia really close to my heart tonight. I'm worried.
Yeah,
about
absolutely.
them. Very worried about them.
You know, we had a taste of Helene here. Very small. I think by the time I got here, it was still technically a tropical depression. Winds were 45, 50 miles an hour, sustained.
And it was a big deal around here.
It was a huge deal. I mean, trees down and power lines down. My mom was out without power for almost a day. So,
My daughter,
But-
2 days.
We just weren't there. We don't live in an area that generally affects us. And that's not something you just get used to, I don't think. You hear some of them old timers talk about it, oh, I'm going to ride it out. And then you see them on, a few days later and they're missing or that's just not something to play with. Hurricanes are the real deal. I don't even know why. Yeah. That's just bad. Robin has some friends down there. I have some friends, Brett's down there. I'm hoping they're safe. I'm sure they are. They're smart kids.
I can't believe the number of old timers that live in places like that it seems like every time one of these comes up, you'll see them on CNN or some news station and they're saying, yeah, I'm going to stick it out. I'm not going to evacuate. I'm 58 years old, but I'm pretty tough. I exercise. I can do 100 sit-ups, whatever. Some comedian several years ago put it really well. If this thing comes through where you're at, the problem isn't the fact that the wind is blowing. The problem is what the wind is blowing.
Yeah.
If you get hit with a Volvo, it doesn't matter how many sit-ups you did this morning.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I saw that Ron DeSantis and his crew down there were doing was from Helene, they were trying their absolute best before tonight to get as much of the debris up as they could, because those debris, just what you said, that debris becomes projectiles.
Weapons, absolutely.
Well, and so many people had from Helene, they had their personal effects destroyed, and a lot of that was piled out on the street to be picked up.
Yeah.
So they like you were saying, they had to spend a lot of effort to try to get as much of those things off the curb because they were going to become projectiles for this next one.
Yeah, crazy. But
I'd also heard that in the states above Florida that took so much damage as well, about 2% of those people had hurricane insurance. So that means the vast multitude of those people that lost their homes, they're gone. They're not going to get reimbursed for that. Their homes are gone.
Yeah, it's insane. Insane.
Yeah, it is.
Well, the one good thing about, if there is a good thing about a hurricane, I think Glenn Beck, and I don't know how you guys feel about Glenn Beck. I like Glenn. He said he went and he toured Asheville. He has a whole organization with a jet that has been feeding and putting water and detergent into these areas. And he was meeting with a bunch of the people, and he said the mentality of the folk there and the people that were there to help from all around the nation was very reminiscent of 9/12, of how people came together after the 9/11 attacks, how people were inviting folks into their home, inviting them to come over and have a hot meal if they had heat. He said it was, and that's very inspiring. I have a good close personal friend of mine that took a pickup truck and is side by side and went down, had the truck loaded to the gills with water and supplies and baby formula. He drove all the way down to Kentucky on his own dime to go down and help that out. So great opportunities. And not to change the subject, but we do have a brand new sponsor. I want to give them a little prop before their ad comes on tonight. JT's Way is a nonprofit. I pray that you never, ever have to use JT's Way. It is not a nonprofit that gets a lot of glory or a lot of talk about it. So that's why we want to put them out here on our show, because what they do is help adults who have lost a child. And I pray that never happens to you. But they help with funeral expenses. They help with the planning process. They help with grief counseling. They help with financial situations. They help with so many things that, as a parent who has lost a child, you don't know which way is up. You don't have any hope, and they provide some of that hope. You can link to them. We'll put a link at the bottom of the show here. You can go to jtway.com. Please share, give, whatever you can do. Every dollar helps, and it is one of the few charities that I endorse because I know that the money goes where it's supposed to go. So
I remember you telling this story initially to me. JT was their son who they lost,
yes,
which is
in a
how
tragic,
they got started.
He was 17, lost him in a tragic auto accident, and basically they could gave up, or they could use the experience to help people.
Such a horrible incident that they turned into something so positive.
Yeah,
and
That's beautiful, man.
Yeah,
it really is.
And they're able to take this and do the same thing with other people.
Yeah,
give a little light to situations that may have seemed utterly, absolutely hopeless.
I pray that none of our listeners ever have to use them. I really do. But I also pray that all of our users find it in their heart to donate a little. So
Very
check
worthy
them out.
organization.
Amen.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So tonight, did you hear about the fire that happened at the circus, Jerry?
The fire at the circus? I don't think so. I missed that newscast.
That had to have
it
been
happened
tragic.
just down the road here, man. It was intense.
Intense. I can imagine so.
Clay's laughing. He liked that.
Intense.
Intense. You know, the some famous words come to mind from a guy that's pretty intelligent. You had all week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's the best you could come up with.
That was wonderful, man. I don't know what you're talking about. Clay even laughed.
All week and a plethora of resources to draw from. And that's what he came up with.
It was good. It was good.
I shouldn't talk too much smack because I can't say mine's much better. What do you call a witch that lives in the desert?
Oh, what?
A sand witch.
Sandwich.
Sand.
That was a tasty joke, Jerry.
Wasn't it though?
Tasty,
Good.
baby.
Yeah, something
Good
you can
comeback.
really sink your teeth into.
Oh, I like it.
Oh man, meaty.
There we go. Keep it going.
Wow.
So all right. So there's this pirate, and he walks into a bar, and he's got a paper towel on his head. The bartender looks at him and says, "What's with the paper towel, buddy?" The pirate says, "Arr, I've got a bounty on me head."
Yeah, Clay wins the dad joke of the night,
Yeah.
without a doubt.
Just forward the trophy of the week. I'll
Not
hold
even
it till,
close.
I'll
He
hold it
said
till
I
next,
got a
I'll
bounty
hold it
on
till
my
next
head.
week. I'll just keep that
Wow.
trophy till next week.
Hey,
You guys can try to take it away from me.
Turn that on. Over there.
Good one, Clay.
Oh my gosh. That was marvelous. I love it. Sorry, I had to hit Jerry to turn the fan on there. Whew, it's getting hot up in here. Especially when people make me laugh like that.
And a little wine to chase it.
Yeah, you know. It's what happens when you step on a grape. And let's add a little
Get a
wine.
little wine. See, you did use my joke from earlier.
Yeah, it was still
Uh-huh.
bad.
Yeah,
It was
I
actually
knew you
quite
liked it.
terrible. Quite terrible.
I knew you liked that joke.
So tonight we're going to just jump into the topic tonight. I think that we've see there's that sound again. It's your phone. It's got to be your phone.
My phone's muted.
Oh, well that's weird.
I mean, look at the volume.
Nice. Well, you have a weird Android phone. Do you have to do other stuff?
No.
You have to normally when you have an Android phone, you have to jump through a lot of hoops to do anything. It's not like a smart.
They have a
Apple.
name for those. Those are called Apple phones.
No. Apple phones.
The
are wonderful.
weird Android, they rename those as Apple phones.
Oh gosh, whatever. Anywho, so tonight's topic is John Fitzgerald Kennedy, our president, at 60. How many years ago?
61.
61
years ago was gunned down. It was our last president that has been assassinated, and as with most things that we do here at Newsworthy, this thing has. I read an article that showed that over 2,000 books have been written on this topic.
Yep.
That there are hundreds of thousands of conspiracies. So obviously, tonight we're not going to get through all of them. But I think we've picked out a few good ones that we want to touch on. If we need to do a second show on this, be happy to do so. But I learned so much about this in doing research for this show that I had no clue. I learned about things and people that I didn't even know existed back in the day.
Well, if you were like me, you'd probably never done research. We'd seen a couple of shows and,
watched the
excerpts.
movie.
Yeah, we'd seen clips, seen a movie.
Well, the movie I never
Some
watched.
social media crap, heard a few interviews.
But to actually dig into it, it's pretty.
First time I'd ever done that.
Yeah, pretty much, and I can understand what it is. Jerry, give us the lead up there.
Okay.
Tell us what's up.
Well, President John F. Kennedy was, first of all, the youngest person ever elected president of the United States. He was also one of the more popular presidents. He was also the very first Catholic president. Do you remember who our second Catholic president was? Steve?
Joe Biden?
That'd be Mr. Joe Biden himself.
Yeah.
There are many conspiracy theories, even at the time, that said that for people who were saying you shouldn't elect a Catholic as president. The reason was they were saying that he would be more loyal to the Pope than to the people of the United States.
Right.
There were many people at the time. It was a big controversy when he ran that a Catholic person was possibly going to be president. He won narrowly. Now, he became a very popular president after he was in office, but it was at the time considered very progressive, very forward-thinking for the country to even elect a Catholic president. He was shot and killed on November 22nd, 1963. He was traveling in a motorcade in an open-top limousine in Dallas, Texas. Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested for the assassination, but he himself was shot and killed 2 days later by Jack Ruby. The FBI, initially, and later the Warren Commission, the House Select Committee on Assassinations, the Church Committee, Defense Secretary Robert McNamara, Attorney General Robert Kennedy, who brother to JFK, as well as the CIA Director John McCone, as well as Secret Service Chief James Raleigh, they all concluded that Oswald had acted alone. But then, and even more so probably now, there are many conspiracy theories about the assassination that said that Oswald was not acting alone. Many of the conspiracy theories obviously go into that. Who was he acting on behalf of? Why did Jack Ruby kill him, etc.? This is probably the mother of all conspiracy theories. And it has become increasingly more popular over the years. Gallup organization has conducted 10 polls from 1963 through 2023, all related to the JFK assassination. Every single one of those found that over half of all Americans believe that Oswald did not act alone. In the most recent poll in 2023, 65%, basically 2/3 of all Americans, said that Oswald did not act alone. It's not just Gallup. A 2003 ABC News poll found that 70% believed that assassination involved more than one person. In 2009, 76% of people polled for CBS News said they believed that he had been killed as a result of a conspiracy. JFK's brothers, Ted and Robert, they both agreed the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Earl Warren, and his Warren Commission had gotten it right. But that doesn't stop the conspiracy theories. As I said, there are probably as many or more today than there were back then.
And probably as more information comes out, because there have been so many documents that have been released. There's still a ton that haven't, but there's been a really large treasure trove of documents related to this case that have been released. And as more of that comes out, I would suspect that those numbers of people that believe there may have been more than one shooter or that there may have been a conspiracy will probably tend to continue to increase.
I will. No, I won't do that. Yeah, I should do that. I'm going to go ahead and say that I also believe I've seen several videos of an attempted assassination here very recently, and I've started digging into them, and some of them are pretty compelling too. That was kind of more than just one dude on a roof.
You talking about Trump?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. There's some videos out there that are if proven factual, or it's not factual. The videos are the videos, but did that video come from that day? Those type things that are going to say that kind of was a big deal too. We'll get
Who's
to
behind
that.
the videos? Credible people?
Well, the videos are just the videos. They come from.
Who is it coming from? Who's putting this information out?
The videos that they're talking about in particular are coming from news stations that were just, and they're just replays of the video when he was shot. They zoom in on some of the people in the background of that moment, and
Then what are you saying if it turns out that they are credible? I mean, if it's news station video, why would it not be credible?
well, because of timelines and context. I don't want to put anything out there that I haven't explored the context of it. Did a guy and I don't want to take away from this, but does a guy rub his neck at just the right time, or is that a sign? That's the type of things that they're talking
I mean, that's why I was asking who the author was. Who put these videos out that you're... If I looked at the videos that you're referring to, who has authorship of it?
Are you saying? I basically, I guess, Stephen, am I wrong in saying that people are looking at the videos that were put on the news,
Yes.
and they're studying those themselves, and seeing things that maybe weren't reported in the news, but they're seeing peculiarities or irregularities in those that are suspicious?
Correct. Yes.
It also sounds like they're taking bits and pieces of clips from different videos.
Which is what I said to begin to open it up.
And my question is, who's doing that?
I don't know.
You didn't look at the author of the video that you're watching?
I'm just saying, I absolutely just said that I hadn't dug into the context of the video.
I'm just asking who.
I say that, and I say it only because
people like
when
me
you talk,
and Stephen, people like me and Stephen are watching them.
but I just wanted to bring it out.
inferences.
The more that you watch something, and a lot of it is, I see something because I want to see something. But some of the things we're going to talk about tonight isn't that we see something because we want to see something. These are videos that have been around 60 years that everybody's seen and that multiple people point out. But go ahead, Clay. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I was just trying to help kind of work out what you were trying to say to Jerry so that he could maybe understand where you were coming from.
No, I understand exactly where it's coming from. My question is, one of the first things I do with anything I look at is look at the source.
Absolutely.
So, because that tells me right there, is it credible, or do I need to do a bunch of investigation to figure out, is this some nut pot to begin with? So that's not something I go back and look at later. That's the first thing I do is who put this evidence out? Who spliced these videos together? So
I think it essentially might be a bunch of people who are deciding to look at these videos as though they were looking at the Zapruder film and trying to see if there's more to it. Yeah. At this point, you probably aren't going to hear anything substantial, but as time goes by and these things are dissected more by either credible or incredible sources, it'll be easier to discern whether these are newsworthy or not, Jerry.
Yes.
But here's, I guess, my biggest question. If there was any question of this, I think we would have already heard it loud and clear from first the Republicans and absolutely from Donald Trump and his campaign.
Well, I don't even want to offset. We'll talk about that on a whole different. I only brought it up in the context that as time goes on, people start without definitive answers. People start to fill in the blanks themselves. That's all the only context I was bringing it up in, and because it directly correlates to what we're talking about tonight. Did not mean to make that a 10-minute.
You can't. There's no way you could have thought you could throw that out and not have it.
Jerry's
I'm just saying.
Jerry's gonna challenge that shit every time, man.
Hell yeah.
That's why we love him. That's why.
Yep.
Hey,
I can't hear that and not go, wait a damn minute.
Pump the brakes, man.
Just pump the brakes.
Anyway, we know on the JFK assassination, there are many, many conspiracy theories, or have been for many years, that continue to grow. Clay's going to tell us about some of them.
So, guys, when I began my research on this topic, I tried to come from one basic fundamental investigator perspective, and that's motive. Who had the prevailing motive to assassinate the president? It is my hope tonight that I can make a relatively compelling case to your listeners that the CIA had such a motive and were deeply involved in the plot to kill Kennedy. 61 years after this event, all the people involved who might have needed to have their identities protected are now dead, but yet full government disclosure is still being withheld. The only plausible reason that might be is to protect the government from the embarrassment and the outrage that would come if the actual truth that they were behind JFK's death was to surface. Kennedy famously stated publicly that he wanted to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds after the disastrous Bay of Pigs incident. The seriousness and conviction with which Kennedy made that threat in and of itself presents undeniable motive on the part of the CIA. So
Kennedy
that's
was
kind of
big
where
on that too.
I'm gonna kind of some of my material tonight is going to be going in that direction.
Kennedy was very big and had he was the youngest president ever elected, and he had big dreams. He was a Democrat, but I don't care about that. He had big dreams. He said, we put a man on the moon because of Kennedy. If and to go along with what Clay was saying, if he said, I want to spread the CIA into the wind, the CIA would have went into the wind if he stayed alive. I don't have a doubt. But go ahead, Clay. Give us some info, man.
Well, a name that does not appear in any of the official reports, but a name that's worth looking into is the name George Ioannidis. He was a Greek gentleman. Ioannidis was previously an unknown operations officer on the CIA Special Affairs staff, and he was running a psychological warfare operation in late 1963 designed to link Lee Harvey Oswald to the Castro government without disclosing the CIA's hand in all of it. Ioannidis' personnel file was quietly declassified in November 1998 with little fanfare or publicity, and the file showed that he served in 1963 as the chief of the psychological warfare branch of the CIA field office in Miami. He had a staff of 24 and at the time a budget of $1.5 million. He was tasked as the handler for the anti-Castro student group that Oswald tried to infiltrate in 1963. This group was known as the Cuban Student Directorate, and under a CIA program codenamed AMSPELL, AMSPELL, Ioannidis was guiding, monitoring, and funding the group with $25,000 a month. That money funded the group's chapters in various U.S. cities, and Ioannidis was known to the group leaders only by his assumed codename, Howard. On November 23, 1963, the Cuban student group published a 7-page brief. Now, this is on November 23rd, the day after. And at this point, I'm not even sure that Oswald had been arraigned. It took a little while for them to even charge him with Kennedy's assassination. But the Cuban student group published a 7-page brief and a 4-page broadsheet attempting to link Oswald to Castro under the banner headline, The Presumed Assassins. The goal of the operation, according to group leaders, was to destabilize the Cuban government and create public pressure for a U.S. attack on the island. Now that Ioannidis' file has become public record, the student group's controversial publication is regarded as the very first conspiratorial explanation of Kennedy's death to reach public print, and the mysterious George Ioannidis of the CIA paid for it. So here we are, one day after the assassination, and the CIA is already muddying the waters. We're
Clay,
already getting weirdness cover stories and things that are like the first conspiracy theory that was created by the CIA.
yeah,
That
he
to
wasn't
me,
even cold yet.
it's really suspicious.
I have a question, and you brought up the Bay of Pigs during Kennedy's, and part of my research was digging into. I started with the big conspiracies and the big people that they thought had a reason to kill Kennedy. One of the first ones that jumped out was the Cubans, because during Castro, or during Kennedy's presidency, he authorized on 42 separate occasions to try to assassinate Castro.
Mm-hmm.
What he didn't authorize, and I don't know if you brought this up or you have this, the general's name who offered. This is such a weird time in our history. The CIA was running amok. They had no oversight, none whatsoever. Huge budget, pretty much do whatever you want. We'd already, at this point in Kennedy's presidency, they had already removed the president of Guatemala. They had already removed a president of, was it the Congo, I believe? And by remove, I mean had him executed.
Permanently removed.
Mm-hmm. The CIA had their hands in all kinds of stuff. But one of the things that the old school, the Eisenhower leftovers, the deep state, if you will, wanted so very much was to remove the Soviet or the communist threat in this hemisphere, meaning get rid of Cuba.
It was a serious undertaking. They were serious about it.
They wanted an all-out invasion of Cuba to remove the communists. And they were planning attacks, fake attacks. They had hired Cuban immigrants to stage, and I'm using air quotes here for the people who are listening to this, to be arrested, air quotes, for doing things to government bases. They had planned false flag attacks in Miami, Boston, Charleston, and in several other cities throughout the United States that they were going to attribute to the Cubans so that we would be able and have the support of the people to go into Cuba with an army and destroy Castro.
It's one of the reasons why Kennedy was so furious with the CIA, because he discovered that these were all false operations that were intended to draw us into an unnecessary war. I also have to say, some of the research that I found, Kennedy was not supporting any assassination attempt on Castro whatsoever. The CIA was pushing him to. The Kennedy archives actually have personal conversations that they have the written record of these personal conversations that Kennedy had with friends and colleagues, where he was confiding in them that he did not support the assassination attempt and was vehemently against it, mainly because still to this day, it is against the law in America for us to assassinate another world leader, even though our CIA attempts to do that crap all the time. It is on the books. It's not something that America typically does. We just don't do that.
Well, what I was going to say, and even all of that being said, when Fidel Castro, who actually openly liked Kennedy because of his relationship with, help me with the name, the Russian leader,
Khrushchev.
Those two guys were actually very friendly and were making great strides to ending the Cold War well before Reagan ever got to it. And one of the things when Fidel Castro was told that Kennedy had been assassinated, he is quoted as to saying, "Things are certainly going to change now. Mm-hmm. Things are certainly going to change." And he didn't mean that in a positive way.
The Cold War got decidedly ramped up after that. It became a much, much more dangerous thing than even America understood at the time. And if you don't believe me, just watch the show The Americans, which details it's a fictional thing, but there were actual FBI agents that watched that show and said this is exactly what was going on in America at the time during the Cold War. We had Russian agents over here who were acting like they were trained to blend in with Americans and to be Americans, and they were running American businesses, and they were spying on us the whole damn time. And the FBI was having a hell of a time keeping up with these guys.
Yeah. Anywho, please continue. Sorry, I just the fact that I thought it that to discount the Cubans. First of all, I don't think the Russians had anything to do with it, because the USSR dissolved during all of those paperwork has came out, and nowhere there's been zero proof that they had any fingerprints on the Kennedy assassination whatsoever.
Yeah, I didn't find anything that would suggest the Russians, or that was compelling enough to suggest the Russians were involved.
Right. So tell us some more, Clay.
That's
I
all
cut
I
you
had.
off.
That's all,
I didn't mean to.
that's all I had about Ioannidis. You guys want to talk about Oswald a little bit, or y'all want to talk about the Warren Commission?
Here's the thing.
Where y'all want to go?
Is there anybody here that doesn't think Oswald did it? I mean,
I'm torn.
I do not think Oswald did it.
At all?
I don't. I think when he said he was a patsy, I think he was a patsy.
So you don't think he was there with a gun?
I think he was there with a gun.
Do you think he fired shots?
He may have, but I'm not certain that he did. But there were 3 cartridges there in the room. There was a rifle. The rifle, there were some questionable things about the rifle that make me a little concerned about why he
was originally a 7.62 and later a 6.5 Italian.
Why he didn't take the shot. I mean, the weight of the evidence makes it extremely unlikely that Oswald could have used the 6th floor carbine to assassinate JFK. It was an old, flimsy, secondhand rifle that he had got.
Accurate rifle.
Also extremely slow to fire.
In good condition, in good condition, it's an extremely accurate rifle. The one he had seemingly was not top notch.
That's not true. They did firing analysis with his gun, and they were telling how big of a circle that 5 bullets were in, from 10 yards, 25 yards, and 100 yards. His rifle was certified to be extremely accurate, from what I read. I'm not saying those people didn't lie, but they took his gun and range tested it.
They also said the scope had a scratch on it, and they didn't know if the scratch was on it before they got custody of it or after.
Yeah.
And the scope that he had on that rifle, there's no way, with the scratch that was on it, there are experts who said there's no way he could have made that shot with that scratch on that scope. Could not have been done.
But again, they don't know when the scratch occurred.
There's a University of Georgia law article that details that I've got a link to. But it was a medium velocity weapon. The ammunition that was fired was manufactured before 1945. It had an unusual 2-stage trigger, which would have slowed down the action of the rifle. It was also a bolt action. The bolt itself was difficult to operate on the rifle. The firing pin was worn, and there was rust on the spring. The weapon's cheap scope was defective and caused the shots to miss target. Moreover, at the time of the assassination, the presidential limousine was traveling away from, at an angle to, and downhill from the 6th floor window. The fatal headshot depicted on frame 313 of the Zapruder film occurred when the non-stationary car was 88 yards, 264 feet from the window, with the president visible only from the waist upward. Oswald was not a reincarnation of Robin Hood. He was not William Tell, and he sure as hell wasn't Annie Oakley. I mean,
everything I read said that a decent marksman with that weapon would have had little to no problem hitting the target.
One of the other issues, though, is the bullet wound in Kennedy's back. According to the Warren Commission, had an upward trajectory. It
Which
could
would be
not have
impossible.
caused. It could have not have been caused by Oswald as the sole assassin firing from above. Under the single bullet theory, Oswald is the sole assassin. He's firing from the 6th floor window of the Texas School Depository building, so the bullet is moving up and then downward.
Joe Rogan brought it up on this. I watched several videos with Joe and several different guests in preparation for this because if you listen to podcasts, I'm sure you've listened to Rogan. He does a lot of things, but the one thing he does is he does his research, him or his team. And the one thing that they bring up the most is the magic bullet theory, and the fact that the governor magically had the bullet laying on his gurney that matched the rifle in the 6th floor window, and it had it was flattened a little on one side, but had otherwise received no damage from the impacts. And the one problem that he has with the single bullet theory is the fact that there was at least one shot that caught the curb. Now, if you were talking about the bullet traveling up, if it's bouncing around, if it's a low caliber gun, a 22, once that bullet gets inside you, it's going to start bouncing off stuff. It's not making a clean exit. This particular magic bullet, and I'm using air quotes, had to go through, out, into another person, bounce around, and then come back up and through Kennedy.
Well, the single bullet theory, I thought, was long since disproved. The one bullet, it would be impossible for what you just said to happen.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And long ago, they quit saying that there was one bullet, as far as I know.
So then the next thing, and the next part of that is...
And that's part of the problem, was their story change, right?
Yes.
Sure.
Part of their story problem is
how can
the
you
story
believe them
change.
when they keep telling different stories?
The second part of them is, you said earlier, I think it was you, that any average marksman can make that shot.
No, a good marksman.
A good marksman.
A good marksman.
Well, there is plenty of proof that shows that Lee Harvey Oswald was not a very good marksman. Average at best.
About that.
Yeah, average at best. And those are coming from his records in the Marines. The Marines are very keen on keeping all of the records of how good a shot you are, because if you are a good shot, they're going to put you in sniper school. Because
You're
they
an
have
extremely good shot. You go to sniper school. Not good shot.
Yeah, well, the bottom line is he was not any of those things. Average at best.
Average for Marines or average for shooters?
Average for Marines.
Okay. And I don't know how that relates to most shooters. I don't know.
I don't either. But what I'm saying is they take anybody, but they're training you to shoot. They're training you to kill. And then we talk about the gun, and you were talking about for an extremely good marksman to be able to utilize this gun. 3 shots were fired.
Not an extremely good marksman, for a good marksman.
For this particular exercise.
Right.
3 shots were fired, according to everyone from the book depository building.
Well, I thought they said 3 to 4.
3 to 4, even.
Right. Possibly 4.
Within 8.3 seconds.
Yep.
On a single shot bolt action rifle.
You got to be quick.
I don't, and accurate. And I don't think that if you were
it's hard to understand how it could have happened. I agree with that.
I do. And go ahead, Clay. Sorry.
Dr. Cyril Wecht, he's a forensic pathologist with 6 decades of research into this subject. He's also a former coroner of Allegheny County, Pennsylvania, and he's also a lawyer. He's both a trained lawyer and a doctor.
Save some for the rest of us, Doc.
He's conducted. This guy has conducted more than 17,000 autopsies and also provided expert testimony on high-profile cases, including the deaths of Robert F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King Jr., Elvis Presley, JonBenet Ramsey, and Lacey Peterson. He's an expert witness. He's also the first non-governmental forensic pathologist to gain access to the National Archives to examine the assassination materials in 1972. Wecht discovered and exposed the ghastly fact that the 35th president's brain had vanished. It's still missing. It
I
was
was going to
never
bring that
it was
up.
never allowed to be examined by anybody other than the people on the inside.
Do you know
As we
why?
he said as we sit and talk today, the president's brain remains missing, unaccounted for. He also is of the mindset that Oswald could not have made this shot by himself. He's not discounting that he didn't take shots. He's just saying he could not have made these shots by himself. One, mainly because of the downward trajectory of or the downward trajectory and then the upward trajectory that conflict with one another.
But doesn't that, sorry to interrupt, but doesn't that go back to the one bullet theory, which the Warren Commission said that there was 2 bullets that struck Kennedy, not one. So
Right.
there wasn't one that went through and turned around and come back. There were 2 bullets. The Warren Commission itself said that. Is that true?
I would suspect that's probably the case. I think
I
that
have
would
a
probably.
question, and this is a morbid question, and I
Kind of a
don't mean for
morbid
it to be.
subject.
It is a morbid subject, but Kennedy didn't have his. Gosh, I'm gonna try to say this in a way that is not disgusting because we do have children on this. When a bullet enters you,
Right.
and then it leaves, that is the part that gets messed up. Is the leaving for the most part.
Usually
Because
makes a
it
bigger hole.
flattens. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
makes a bigger
so
hole
the
coming
exit
out
wound
than going
is
in.
always
Bigger.
bigger
Mhm.
than the
entry.
front.
Sure.
And in the videos, and in researching this, you get to see some pictures if you don't turn if you turn your filters off.
Yeah.
It wasn't the front of Kennedy that was exposed, if you will. It was the back of his head. How does that happen
When you're shot from the back.
when you're shot from the back? I just don't see that it happens.
Mhm.
And there were some discrepancies between what and this whole thing got messed up right from the minute he got to the hospital. As far as different agencies claiming, like when he got to the hospital, he was already dead. Okay, they already knew he was dead.
Mhm.
So one of the hospitals said, "Hey, the wound in the neck is an exit wound or an entrance wound." And then there was an argument between the local coroner, the state of Texas coroner, the CIA, and the FBI, and I guess the Secret Service, not the FBI, were all arguing about who has jurisdiction in this. Now they have it clear in stone because of this. That it is a federal issue. The body or the president is in federal custody under no circumstances,
But
regardless of
who
what
has
happens.
who has jurisdiction?
The federal government, anytime it involves
Which
the president.
branch?
Oh, that would be the Secret Service first, always. That is their sole, not their
That-
sole, but
That would be
their
Treasury then, because
Yeah.
Treasury oversees Secret
Yeah.
Service.
So that's the way it's fixed now. But even back then, it was messed up. And then as soon as they got him to, was it Walter Reed they took him to, the body? And anyway, when he got to the federal, they said that the wound in the neck wasn't a bullet wound, that it was a trach wound. No doctor there ever said, at Parkland said, "Hey, we put a trach in the president because he was dead when he got here." That
No, I
makes
think he
great
got shot in
sense.
the neck.
Huh?
I think the one that went
Yeah.
through his neck's the one that went into Connolly.
Exactly.
The head
Yeah.
wound that killed him didn't go into Connolly. I think.
Right. I
I
don't
think that's
disagree with
accurate.
you.
Yeah.
So real quick, we got gosh, this subject is so big, Clay.
Oh, I
Shame
know.
on you for bringing
Well,
it up.
listen. Before we move away from Oswald, there's one thing that I thought was very interesting, and I'm
Oh,
going to put
please.
this. I'm going to start off with a disclaimer that this test, the paraffin tests that were run, can be questioned as to how accurate they are. They're not the most valid gunpowder test. There are certainly today a lot more technologies and sciences that are far more accurate. But the police did run what's called a paraffin test on Oswald's hand and his cheek, where he would have had the rifle up against his shoulder. And they discovered with the paraffin test, now again, a questionable test that the validity can be questioned. But the paraffin test turned up black powder on his hand, which would be consistent with the fact that he did shoot the police officer before he went into the movie theater with his handgun. But the paraffin test did not turn up any black powder on Oswald's face. None.
Okay, I want to throw another wrench into that. There was an actual further talking about whether Oswald acted alone or was he a patsy for the CIA. The person that worked at the movie theater said, and his testimony was largely panned, said that, hey, I saw Oswald in the theater during the shooting. I saw, and one of the people that sold popcorn, one of the movie attendants, said at 1:15 I was selling Oswald popcorn.
So you don't think he was even at the shooting?
That's what some people allege.
But that conflicts with a metric crap ton of people who saw him in the commissary, the lunchroom,
exactly,
and in the building prior to the shooting.
Well, what I'm leading up to with that is the exact same thing happened in Mexico. And Jerry and I, we talked a little bit about this prior. The FBI had been watching Oswald. They had seen him in Mexico. They had pictures. No. Let me finish.
Go ahead.
They had taken pictures and had recorded voice samples of who they thought was Oswald in Mexico.
There's
someone using Oswald's name.
It was someone. It turned out to be someone using his name. Even J. Edgar Hoover said that wasn't him and got rid of the voice because. So what I'm getting at is there's a lot of people that think that the CIA was using a body double to give more credence to this.
I don't think the FBI was involved because J. Edgar Hoover, who certainly was known to do a lot of crappy stuff and would be one of my first suspects, but starting the day after, he was saying, wait a minute, there's some crazy crap going on here, including this. He had a conversation with President Johnson, and Johnson said, have you established any more about Oswald's visit to the Soviet embassy in Mexico last September? J. Edgar Hoover replied, no, there's one angle that's very confusing for this reason. We have here the tape and the photograph of the man at the Soviet embassy using Oswald's name. The picture and the tape do not correspond to this man's voice nor to his appearance. In other words, it appears that there was a second person at the Soviet embassy, end quote. So J. Edgar Hoover himself was saying the day after, something's going on here. Now, if you were part of the cover-up, that'd be the last thing in the world you'd be doing.
Right.
So I don't think the FBI was involved.
For once.
Once, especially with Hoover, because he was involved in a lot of crap.
So let me throw a name at you guys. And I want to. This ties into what Clay was saying. Let me talk to you about the name Allen Dulles. Do y'all know who that is?
Dulles.
Absolutely.
Dulles, Dulles.
Dulles.
So Allen Dulles was the CIA director when President Kennedy was elected. Deputy director. When he was elected president. He was the one responsible for the Bay of Pigs and was fired and replaced after the Bay of Pigs debacle. If anybody has an axe to grind, it is someone who has had a completely free range to do whatever the F you want to do, to whomever the F you want to do it to, and then all of a sudden have all of that power taken away from you. What do you think, Clay?
Well, First of all, I'm glad that you mentioned that Dulles was fired for
He
his
absolutely was fired.
for
In
his
fact, not only was he fired, Clay, let me just interrupt you real quick because this is important. When you, and you yourself, myself, and Jerry have all had to be in a position that we had to relieve people of their duties. We've all been in management. We've all ran multi-million-dollar stores. We know what this is about. It's not a fun experience. It's
sometimes
an embarrassing
experience. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not.
Most of the time, it's an awkward situation. The
Mm-hmm.
person just wants to get out of the room, and you want them out of the room because
Mm-hmm.
it's so awkward, and you hate this. But
I've regretted it more times than I haven't, but there's been 3 or 4 that I've thoroughly enjoyed.
oh, absolutely, we've all had those.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, when President Kennedy relieved Dulles of his command and replaced him, he didn't let him just leave. He made him get into a convertible with him and his replacement and ride in the parade route after the action was done. If that's not rubbing your face in it,
How
and
can you
showing,
make someone do that?
right?
If you just fired him, I'd be like, F you, I ain't going with you. Screw
Yeah.
it.
Right. But he did, and he did. And if that's not a snub in your face, I don't know what is. If that's not a, hey, I'm going to take your nose and rub your nose in it, I don't know what is.
It almost seems not that way. Because why would he agree to do this after being fired? Why would he agree to go with it?
Because you don't want to lose your pension?
No,
Maybe?
he can't
I don't
take
know.
your pension.
That's
That's not the way these jobs work.
It's also the president of the United States wants to have a private audience with you, and it's kind of hard to, even as he's a servant of the government and
It's
was
not
pretty
anymore. He's not. He
well.
got fired.
I just don't think that
He
that's
had a
something
long
you do.
career of that, and was maybe hoping that he could possibly, just like this
Maybe.
Secret Service director that the lady who was in charge when Trump just got shot, she was hoping against hope that she could still maintain some kind of job in government even if she lost that position, and that's why she was kind of hanging on to her spot and not really resigning. She was hoping that she could recoup some of that.
Now,
But interestingly, here's an interesting little tidbit about Dulles that's going to shed a little bit of light about the mentality of what the CIA is capable of saying to people. In a Washington Post article dated November 22nd, 1974, by a gentleman named Donald P. Baker, newly declassified documents at that time revealed that former CIA chief Dulles told the Warren Commission that the directors of the CIA or the FBI might lie to anyone but the president to protect the identity of their operations and their undercover agents. The article goes on to say that the commission member, Senator Richard P. Russell, said to Dulles, and I quote, "If Oswald never had assassinated the president, or at the very least been charged with assassinating the president, and had been in the employ of the FBI or the CIA, and somebody had gone to either agency, they would have denied the agent." Dulles's reply was, "Oh, yes." Russell then said, "They would have been the first to deny it. Your agents would have done exactly the same thing." And Dulles replied, "Exactly."
I think that's still true today.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Harold Weisberg, author of the book Whitewash 4 and longtime critic of the Warren Report, said that the commission failed to interview any of the news reporters who had written that sources had told them Oswald had been employed by the FBI or the CIA. The statement can be corroborated by a check of the witnesses called by the commission. If you look at the witnesses called, they never spoke to any of those reporters who were reporting that they had sources saying that he was a CIA agent, not an agent, but an operative. Weisberg also said in an interview, "I have no idea who killed JFK. That's a function of government. I just know it was not Oswald."
wow. So, in speaking of that, I want to bring up a couple of quick things that lead me to believe that, Clay, you're 100% right. Thing number one, the Babushka Lady in the video, we still have no idea to this day who this lady was, who was videotaping, who after the assassination calmly turned and walked away.
Yeah.
And disappeared forever.
Yeah.
I want to bring that up. I also want to bring up a little known thing that I had never heard of before, which was the Three Tramps. Did you all get into any of this research with the Three Tramps?
I did, and once I saw how muddy these waters were, I backed the hell out. It's this
Good choice.
This whole thing here is so. The first thing I said was Jerry's going to chew this up and spit it out. I'm not even going to go there.
So yeah, true fact. But
Yeah.
I got to bring it up because I think that it contributes to the story some. So the Three Tramps have been identified as three acting, at the time, CIA agents. They have pictures of the tramp who was standing there. And that's such a weird name. That's not what I think of, but it's basically three dudes that were kind of hanging out together. Each of those have been attributed to a specific CIA asset that was there at that particular moment. And first of all, let me say that this square where he was shot, in my mind, it's very big. According to everybody who's ever been there, it is very small. It is very compact. The one thing I never understood about Oswald, and if he did shoot, is why did he not shoot when they were driving toward him as opposed to driving away? I thought that would have been a cleaner shot. There are rumors that says that Oswald wasn't even shooting at Kennedy. He was actually shooting at Conley and missed. Take that for what you want. But the one thing that makes me believe, hands down, that this was a CIA operation, and that they had redundancies there to make sure that the deed got done, is because of what happened 3 weeks prior to this assassination.
Mm-hmm.
Do any of you know what I'm talking about?
The
I'm
woman in Louisiana?
No, Chicago.
Okay, different one.
Okay, so 3 weeks prior in Chicago, there was to be a very similar open top car. Kennedy loved his convertibles.
Motorcade.
He loved the convertibles. It got him close to the people. He liked being that. He liked hearing them. He liked hearing his name. He was very, as most presidents are, very narcissistic. He loved, all the energy that being the president gave him. A young man named Thomas Valley, and I want you guys to look him up because I feel like this is going to be a part 2 at some point, right? Thomas Valley lived a very but we don't hear about him, okay? Because he was caught with an M1 Garand rifle and 3,000 rounds of ammunition. Imagine this, in a job that put him right on the parade route during the day and the time that the parade was going to be coming through, very similar to Lee Harvey Oswald. He was put into that position at the book suppository like 2 or 3 weeks in advance of this, and was given clearances to go into those areas in the book where he could make, according to the pictures that I saw, he basically took books and stacked them up where you couldn't see what he was doing back there. The same thing applies to Mr. Thomas Valley. Loner individual, wasn't married, had a big wantingness to be more than he was. And folks, I get that. To be able to aspire to be better than you are is what makes people great, or unfortunately can make you go and do dumb things. This guy particularly was caught, and the thing that makes it so weird is that the CIA has a thing in a file system called a 201 file system. Did any of you run across this in your in your research?
Nope.
No.
I went deep in a rabbit hole once I figured out that this is the guy I wanted to research. So what a file 201 is a CIA asset or a CIA non-asset that they're going to utilize and have this file on for if you do something stupid. Hence, assassinate the President of the United States. It allows them, it is a file that they build about their own people and their own assets that they can use as
Blackmail material?
blackmail material,
Mhm.
or that guy did it and we've been watching it for a while, but we missed him. We couldn't get him before he got the deal done. It is right in line with the false flags and with the patsy that Lee Harvey Oswald said he was. They will utilize the file 20, the 201 files to make people that they don't need anymore disappear.
Mm-hmm.
That was when I started digging into the 201 files, and especially Thomas Valley. This is the kind of thing, let me just read a little bit about, and I'm actually taking this from the ABC website. This is ABC 7, and I think this is in Chicago, Illinois. Just real quick. This is Lee Harvey Oswald actually talking, let's see, in a book that Bolden wrote with his late wife, due out next spring. Now, Bolden is the author here. He will cite another contributing factor in the JFK murder, on-duty drunkenness by the Secret Service. Now, back then, that was what they did. They protected the president, and they got drunk a lot. There was
They still get caught doing the same crap.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, the very first African-American CIA Secret Service operative that was assigned to a president was on JFK. Got fired because he wouldn't partake in the drinking and the carousing, and actually got put in prison later because they didn't want it, because he started coming
They were
out.
afraid he would tell
They
them.
was afraid he would tell, so they trumped up some charges and made him go away permanently.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the kind of security that they had at the time. Kind of sounds like history's repeating itself. But what I want to get into, he says, I told the chief of the Secret Service this, and that if anything happens, an emergency situation develops with President Kennedy, that their reflexes are going to be in a condition that they won't be in a condition to respond. And Dallas, Texas proved I was right. The president's life was in grave danger because of the inefficiency of the security around him. Too many weaknesses. When the bullet struck the head of the president, it struck me too because I saw it coming.
Wow.
That's pretty dang condemning of the Secret Service of the time. In fact, the convertible that he was riding on is supposed to have metal stairs where the back bumper should be, so that agents can ride on that car and be prepared to protect the president. In fact, in the Zapruder film that you see, there's an agent that jumps up on the back of the car and is going toward the president. Isn't even part of the president's detail. He's on Jackie Onassis. He's on the president's wife, Jackie's detail, and he's jumping up to protect her.
As she's scooping up the president's brains.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there is nobody in a condition or a state that responds to the president. Even if when the first shot hit his neck, there was still a chance he could have survived if they got him to the hospital. But when the second shot hit and there was nobody there to protect him, there's no hope there. You can't scoop up your brains and put them back in. You know what I mean? I absolutely believe that with all of the evidence, and they say circumstantial evidence doesn't lead to a conviction. What it does do is lead, if you pile enough on it, it leads to an acquittal because there's reasonable doubt. And I think that there is more than enough reasonable doubt that say Oswald did not do this alone. Dulles probably, when fired, had enough people in the CIA who were loyal to him and were afraid. And here's the underlying condition for me. Jerry and Clay, and
Sure.
you guys, if I'm wrong, you guys tell me I'm wrong. I'm not gonna hurt my feelings. The underlying condition with this whole ordeal is the fear of communism.
Yeah.
It has a lot to do with power. It has a lot to do with stroke. But
How does it relate to him?
But do what?
I've never heard any suggestion that he was communist leaning.
No. He was working with the communists to get rid of the Cold War. He was trying to do things differently than Eisenhower had done.
When
And
the
a
police,
lot of people. Oh, go ahead, Clay.
when the police interrogated and the FBI interrogated Oswald, they asked him bluntly on the second day of interrogation, "Are you a communist?" And he said, "No, I'm a Marxist."
Big difference.
He made
Sort
a
of.
delineation between the two, and there is politically and philosophically there is a difference.
Yeah.
It's easy to conflate the two, but there is a distinct difference between the
Same
two.
with republics
He
and
considered
democracies.
he considered himself a Marxist, not a communist.
I'm just saying that there's enough people that hated and were scared of the communists that Dulles could have easily pulled a few strings because of that to make this particular president go away.
Guys, here's my problem, and I'm torn. There's a ton of evidence that there's a ton of things that happened that aren't explained.
Yeah.
Period. But
Just like UFOs.
true. If there was a conspiracy, here's what we have to believe. It would have to involve the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. It would have to involve the Republican, the Democratic, and the non-party members of the Warren Commission. It would have to involve the House Select Committee on Assassinations. It would have to involve the Church Committee. It would have to involve the FBI. It would have to involve the CIA, which you all think it
Absolutely does.
Okay. It would also have to involve brothers, Attorney General Robert Kennedy, brother Ted Kennedy, United States Senator. It would have to involve the United States Secret Service. It would have to involve, in large respects, the United States White House. Every one of these organizations and people signed off and said the Warren Commission largely got it right. Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. There was no conspiracy.
Glad you brought that up.
Prior to
Tell
his death,
me.
Lyndon Johnson backed away from that prior to his death and said he had
Hold on. Okay.
big questions.
One person out of the 5,000 we mentioned. Tell me how that 60 years later, there's not been one word of a conspiracy theory from any of these people. We've established long ago that you can't have one family sitting at a Thanksgiving dinner table telling a true story that by Christmas, you ask them to recount the story and it'll be different. How can you get 5,000 members on different ideological standpoints from all these organizations to tell the same story to their death?
I don't think it takes 5,000. One of the crucial members of the Warren Commission, do you want to know who I'm getting ready to say?
Alan Dulles.
Alan Dulles.
How about Gerald Ford?
Gerald Ford?
How about Chief Justice?
Oh.
He was the chairman of the commission.
I just believe that Mr. Dulles has here's a line that I'll use for you, Jerry. If we're sitting here and we're in the Warren Commission, and I tell you that if we go this way, our nation, our principles, and the way we live could come to a screeching halt if we do this. Or
Which
if
Lyndon Johnson was saying himself. He was saying, guys, we need to reassure the American public.
Or if we do this and we reassure the American public and we all come out as a united front, it makes this go away a lot faster.
Again, you're talking about a shitload of people. Shitload of people.
Trump was getting ready to do the last dump of these documents, and he was going to come clean with everything that we've been wanting to see. And Pompeo pulled him to the side and said, "Mr. President, if you do this, it's going to change everything forever, and we may not ever get it back." And Trump even told Judge Napolitano, "If you saw and heard what I saw and heard regarding JFK, you wouldn't have released it either."
No,
I just can't believe that you get this number of people telling the same story to their deathbed
Let me-
60 years later.
let me
and
ask you a
no
question.
one breathes a word
Let me
against
ask you a question 60
What's that?
years later. I understand where you're coming from, and I don't disagree. It's the same reason, as counterintuitive as it is, that I believe 1,000,000% we actually went to the moon. Okay? It would take a colossal, a Herculean effort to shut all these people up and fake it. Okay? If we faked going to the moon. You would
No,
have
we saw evidence.
we saw what they wanted us to see. There's evidence out there that says we didn't.
No, there's not.
Yeah.
There's not. There's conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories are not evidence. Huge difference.
Well,
I'm just telling
we
you.
can talk about that later.
Let me go down this one real quick because I know we're getting ready. We're getting close to the end here. We're maybe a little over.
Oh, we're way over, but that's okay. It's worth it.
During the opening, Jerry mentioned CIA Director McCone, and here's an interesting story. I'm just going to go through it real quick regarding RFK Jr. And RFK Jr. has told the story several times, several different platforms. He said that on November 22nd, 1963, his mom picked him up early from school. She took him out of school and brought him home. And on the way home, she told him what had happened to JFK. When they got to the house, that they lived in a big mansion in McLean, Virginia. I've been to McLean, Virginia. Jerry, you used to live in Virginia, right? It's a pretty
close to that area.
It's a very affluent area.
Absolutely.
So they lived in Hickory Hill. He said that his dad was there with Director McCone, who was the head of the CIA at the time. And John McCone was a longtime family friend, he said. McCone would come over to the Kennedy house every day after work and swim in their swimming pool. Oftentimes, he would stay for dinner. He was unmarried at the time, and so he was very close to the Kennedy family. So Bobby said that when he got out of the car, his dad and Robert Kennedy and McCone were standing there talking. And this is the day of the assassination. And he overheard his dad say to McCone, "Tell me your people did not do this." And McCone responded, "I have no idea who did this." And he said that the fact McCone didn't say, "Oh, well, of course not. Of course none of my people did this. We wouldn't have nothing to do with something like this." That's not what the man said. He said, "I have no idea who did this." And Bobby Kennedy said that stuck out in his mind for over 60 years now. Now, you guys know me, okay? And by now, a bunch of your listeners know me. I've been watchdogging big government for quite some time now. One of the early lessons I learned from my mentors at the 10th Amendment Center and from doing this day in and day out is that oftentimes what the government does not say can often be as telling and revealing as what they do actually say. In this instance, the acting director of the CIA did not come out and vehemently and explicitly deny the CIA's involvement. I think Bobby Kennedy was absolutely right to have this particular reply stick out in his mind all these years. I really do.
Yeah.
If I was the acting CIA director and the president got killed and the attorney general of the United States comes up to me and says, "Tell me your people did not do this," man, I would be screaming from the top of the rooftops, "Hell no, we didn't do this. This is the most un-American thing that could possibly happen." But his reply was very cryptic. "I don't know who did this." You're the director of the CIA, man. You should have some kind of knowledge of who could possibly have done this. He could have said anybody at that time. He could have blamed Castro at that point in time.
Now,
Anything.
in full disclosure, RFK Jr. is the granddaddy of all conspiracy theorists. He believes, first of all, his father, his uncle, all said at the time that they thought that JFK or that Oswald did it alone. But he fully believes in the conspiracy theories. Not only this conspiracy theory, every conspiracy theory. He's much worse than you guys put together. He's the one that says vaccinations are all a huge conspiracy theory that's killing and
No,
Americans.
he absolutely does not. That's
Yes,
wrong,
he does.
and that is so misrepresentative of what he says.
Okay, then
He
what is his stance on vaccinations? Is he
his
for
stance on
vaccinations?
his stance on vaccinations is, and it's very public. You can look it up. It is a matter of record. He
Absolutely,
is
many times.
all he is stating is that there have never been long-term tests on what they do, and that's all he's ever asked for, is that there
That is
should be
not true.
long-term tests.
Sorry, Clay, that is not true. He is
Oh,
very
it's
anti-vax, and he
absolutely
says
true.
that we are.
He's
Here-
on
Clay
here's-
is
record.
extremely anti-vax.
He's not. He is he is extremely for having a full disclosure of what they do, and currently we don't have a system set up for that. And if you go, it's on record. He's on record saying that time and time and time again, again. Look it up.
I have.
It's
Think about what you just said. You just said that he said that we have no long-term studies on vaccinations. I was born in 1965. When I was a kid, you had to be vaccinated to go to school. This man thinks those vaccinations are wrong and are not studied. I'm 59 years old. They were required to go to school when I was a kid. He's still saying that those are unproven and unfact-checked. That's the biggest bunch of bullshit I've ever heard.
I'm not certain that that's the case. I think he's saying right now that the schedule that we have is about 4 times the schedule of inoculations that you, me, or Steven have ever had to do.
Yeah, they are quite ramped up.
The time frame with which the children have to get them is you're cramming a lot more shots into a smaller window, and that we don't know what's happening with that. And we probably need, as a country, to do some research and require big pharma to actually tell us what possible long-term effects could be. He's on the record on that. That is not
So,
accurate at all.
Let me just interrupt. That's a whole different show.
And do you know why his voice is like it is?
Why?
Vax injured from a flu
wow.
shot.
Vax what?
He was vax injured from a flu shot.
Wow. I always wondered why his voice sounded the way it does.
It didn't
Anyway.
always used to be that way.
Let me just interject for real quick so we can finish this up. Vaccinations, we can cover the conspiracies around them anytime. That's cool. I'm game for that. However, earlier in the show, you mentioned that one of you guys mentioned that John F. Kennedy's brain had disappeared.
Clay.
Yeah.
Clay, do you know why that was and who did it? They pretty much know who did that and why. That
What's
was
the
his
story?
brother, Robert F. Kennedy, or Robert Kennedy.
Robert Kennedy.
Stole the brain. Do you know
Really?
why? Because President Kennedy, at the time of his death, was on enough medications that he thought that if it came out, that it would have been proven that he was actually and believably unfit to be president, because he was on pain medicines. He was on muscle relaxers.
Yeah.
He was on depression medicine. He was on like 15
Taking
different
his
kinds.
brain doesn't stop that.
It eliminates the ability for someone to go in and do the research and find that
No, it
information
doesn't.
out.
But
And any
what
blood
about
test
his
will do
blood?
that.
It would have been in his bloodstream.
Any
That's
blood
just what the record shows.
that doesn't make sense, Steve. It doesn't. I
Yeah.
mean, since way before that, we knew that any blood test would determine that. You don't do a brain
Sure.
scan. You don't do brain scan to determine if someone is high on drugs or alcohol.
Right.
You don't do that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
I'm thinking,
Yeah.
doesn't make
Yeah.
sense.
That's what I read. That's the research that I came up with. I'm sorry. So,
I don't
John
know
F.
where you
Kennedy,
read this
Clay, do you believe this needs more or less research?
Oh,
or is it
man.
newsworthy?
I think it's going to be newsworthy for a lifetime until we get all the details, man. Until it all comes out, man.
That's not going to be happening in our
never
lifetime.
going away,
Clay.
man. 2
I
thumbs
agree
up.
with Clay, totally, and I agree with you. It'll never all come out. I don't think.
Yeah. No.
And I think that, and here's ultimately why I believe. Sorry about that. Ultimately, why I believe that the CIA was involved, because it will never all come out.
Maybe that's a pretty good argument for it.
I mean,
I still have a hard time figuring out how you get this number of people to sign off and say it wasn't a conspiracy.
it's for the betterment of
Oswald
the country.
acted alone. See, I don't believe you get this number of people to sign off on shit, even the truth,
Yeah.
much less a cover-up.
Yeah.
I just don't know how you do it.
There you go.
It's
Well,
valid.
I also agree that this needs more news attention, and I'm not opposed to adding a second episode probably sometime around January, to be honest.
Yeah,
What do you think,
I'm
Clay?
gonna need some time to come down from this one. This one was gonna be. I knew it was gonna be an awesome episode, and it proved out to be everything and then some. Man, I
It was a
really
good one.
love this. This was a great show, guys.
By the way,
Great show.
Clay, you, as always, were a awesome guest. You did a ton of research, and thank you so much for always, but especially for tonight. You did an awesome job.
Oh, likewise, guys. Thank you for having me, and thank you all for just giving such a wonderful platform to talk about things that a lot of folks may not get a chance to hear or talk about, or things that make people a little uncomfortable, man, because
Yep.
dude, I don't have a lot of places to go to talk about this kind of shit. So
Well, you're always welcome here.
Absolutely.
And
Thank
we're so stoked. We got like at least 15, 20 more interviews coming up with people just like you, Clay, that
Man.
will hopefully just continue to expand our show, man. I'm excited.
I think so much of both of you guys, man, and I really appreciate what you all are doing. And you always got a fan over here cheering for you guys, man. I know you all were in 49 states. Y'all ever get that 50th state?
We did. We
Did we?
got Louisiana
That's right.
finally.
Hot
Louisiana was the final holdout. And
You got that Cajun listener.
we got that one dude down there on the street corner waiting to go to the liquor store. He didn't have anything else to do.
Eating gumbo and listening to some newsworthy.
I even went to Louisiana to leave for a cruise, and I downloaded like 10 episodes, and it never showed that I downloaded from Louisiana. So I was like, damn it. So we finally did get the one from Louisiana. It was the last holdout. We are so excited. If you listen in Louisiana, we love you. We're also in about 96 other countries worldwide now. So just amazing to me. Most of those countries don't even speak English. I don't know how that works. Maybe they just want to hear Jerry's butter smooth voice. I don't know. It's wonderful.
Want to see
Google
my beautiful
Translate.
face.
Google Translate.
Yeah, I guess. All right, let's do this bonus story, shall we?
Let's do it.
Right on.
What a great conversation. But we're not done yet. Stick around through these very important ads for an awesome bonus story. JT's Way is a Christ-centered, nonprofit organization with a call to help hurting families during the loss of a child. At JT's Way, they assist families grieving from the loss of a child through assistance with things like funeral expenses, emotional support, guidance through the grief process, and help in their healing journey. While paying for funeral expenses, they help navigate picking a funeral home, burial plot, or cremation services, and provide families with grief counseling resources. JT was 17 years old when he died unexpectedly in an automobile accident. He was a senior in high school and a student in the automotive class. JT loved cars and music, and he took his role of friend very seriously, and made sure to make friends wherever he went. Their mission at JT's Way is to minister to families by financially assisting and connecting them with their local resources. These resources will assist in the financial and emotional burden of burying a child. Their aim is to aid in the healing process for parents and families, and these resources include grief counseling and parent-sibling groups. The outside world doesn't stop, but we can tell you from experience that a parent's world certainly does. In a time of desperate hopelessness, JT's Way provides hope. If you want to help support JT's Way in their mission, please reach out to them at www.jtsway.com. JT would often say, "Let me challenge you to make a friend, be a friend, and most importantly, bring a friend to the loving arms of Jesus Christ."
Hi, this is Ed Locke with USA Mortgage. Buying your first home can be overwhelming, but here are 5 tips to make the process go smoother. Number 1, find a lender, me, Ed Locke, that can answer any questions you might have and help you get pre-approved. There are multiple options available based on your situation. Number two, work with a real estate agent you can trust. Number three, don't rush the process. Take your time and know that the process could take some time. Number four, consider all the costs. Number five, get a home inspection and review it with your realtor. Keep these tips in mind, budget for yourself, and you'll be that much closer to making your dream of homeownership a reality. So reach out to me at 502-680-0953. NMLS ID 448908, DAS Acquisition Company, LLC, doing business as USA Mortgage, NMLS ID 227262. This is not a commitment to lend. Additional terms and conditions apply. USA Mortgage is an equal housing opportunity.
If you would like to share suggestions for future episodes, or simply tell us how much you love or hate us, reach out to us via email at newsworthywithsteveandjerry@gmail.com or text us at area code 540-709-1318. And now, back to the story.
Jerry, for the bonus story tonight, we're going to South Dakota.
Nice.
For centuries in South Dakota, ancient peoples have come in contact with what they call the weeping banshee. An ancient sea bottom of Badlands National Park, one will find labyrinth of canyons and high cliffs made of sandstone and hard-packed clay. The visual setting is unlike anything else in North America. Fantastic peaks of silt turned into rock, and what's left was a seabed some 75 million years ago. This truly otherworldly, beautiful, but sometimes bleak, savage, and oppressive landscape, one may be unlucky enough to stumble across the Banshee of the Badlands. Some legends say it's a ghost of an indigenous woman who was killed in this area. Others say it's a ghost of a white woman who settled in the region but died before her time. But many visitors have come to the park and heard her shrieking cry near Watchdog Butte. And some people have even witnessed the Banshee ghost too, floating atop a hill 1 mile south of Watchdog Butte. While the blood-curdling shriek of a banshee is enough to terrify even the bravest of souls, some visitors have insisted that the banshee means no harm. Travelers have said they have saw the banshee weeping or mourning on her hill, but nothing said or done by visitors ever seemed to avail the banshee of her sadness. So if you're ever in South Dakota and you hear something in the middle of the night, it could be the banshee. Crazy, right?
Very.
And Jerry, if you can't see the light,
Be the light.